Businessman sees his fiancée mock homeless girl and decides to do what he always feared. Richard Thompson had built a business empire by age 35, but carried within him a paralyzing fear of confronting the people he loved. His fiancée, Vanessa, represented everything he believed he wanted: beauty, elegance, and social status. It was while leaving the finest restaurant in New York City that everything changed. Vanessa pointed her finger at a black teenager sitting on the sidewalk and began laughing loudly, making cruel comments about the girl's torn clothes and messy hair. "Look at that one, Richard. How disgusting," said Vanessa, not caring if others could hear. She should be working instead of begging for handouts. The young girl, who didn't look older than 17, shrank back and lowered her head, clearly embarrassed. Richard felt a tightness in his chest, seeing tears begin to stream down the girl's face. "Vanessa, let's go," he murmured, trying to pull her by the arm. No, let me have some fun," she continued, laughing. "I bet she can't even read properly. Look at that dumb face." In that moment, something broke inside Richard. During 2 years of dating, he had ignored small signs of Vanessa's cruelty, always making excuses or changing the subject when she made mean comments about other people. His greatest fear had always been confronting her, as that would mean admitting she might not be the woman he imagined. "Vanessa, stop it," he said, more firmly this time. "Oh, don't tell me you feel sorry for her." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "These people just want to take advantage of fools who pity them." The girl stood up slowly, clearly wanting to leave. It was then that Richard saw something that shocked him even more. She carried a plastic bag with some worn school books. She wasn't just any beggar, she was a student. "Could you stop talking about me like I'm not here?" the young girl said quietly, but with dignity in her voice. "I'm not begging. I was just resting before heading home." Vanessa grew even more irritated with the response. "Oh, how bold. Now you want to act superior?" She approached the girl. "Just look at you, all dirty and poorly dressed, and you still want to talk to me?" "Enough, Vanessa," Richard finally exploded, surprising himself. "Stop it right now." His fiancée looked at him with complete disbelief, as if she couldn't understand why he was defending a stranger. "You're defending this thing?" Vanessa pointed again at the girl. "She's a person, not a thing," Richard answered, feeling his heart race. It was the first time in 2 years he had openly confronted Vanessa. The teenager looked at him with surprise and something that seemed like gratitude. She had delicate features and intelligent eyes that contrasted with her worn clothes and holey sneakers. "Thank you," she said simply, and began walking away. "Where are you going?" Richard asked, ignoring Vanessa's furious look. "Home," the girl answered without turning around. "My father must be waiting for his medicine." Before Richard could ask anything else, she turned the corner and disappeared. Vanessa was red with anger. "I can't believe you humiliated me because of that tramp," she shouted right in the middle of the sidewalk, making passers-by stop to look. "Let's talk at home," Richard said, trying to stay calm. "No, we'll talk now." Vanessa crossed her arms. "What's gotten into you? Since when do you care about street people?" Richard looked at the woman he planned to marry, and for the first time saw clearly who she really was. The mask of elegance had fallen, revealing a cruelty he had always pretended not to notice. "Always," he replied, surprising himself with his own honesty. "I just never had the courage to admit that it bothered me about you." Vanessa took a step back, as if she'd been slapped. "Bothered you about what?" "Your lack of compassion. Your cruelty toward those who have less than you." The words were coming out unfiltered now, like a dam had broken. "I've seen you mistreat waiters, cleaners, doormen. I always thought it was just a bad moment, but today I saw that it's just who you are." "Are you comparing me to that disgusting creature?" Vanessa was hysterical now. "I'm your fiancé. We're getting married in 6 months. How can you—" "Maybe we need to rethink this wedding," Richard interrupted, and the words came out before he could even fully process what he was saying. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. "Are you breaking up with me? Because of that thing?" "I'm stopping to think about the kind of person I want to be," Richard answered. and the kind of person I want by my side." Vanessa started to cry, but they were tears of anger, not sadness. "You'll regret this, Richard Thompson. You're throwing away everything we have because of some nobody from the South Side. If that's how you see people, then maybe I should have made this decision a long time ago," he said. And for the first time in years, he felt truly at peace with a difficult decision. Vanessa hailed a taxi and left, but not before shouting a few insults that made pedestrians stop and stare. Richard stood there, in the middle of the busy sidewalk, trying to process what had just happened. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 hours later, Richard was still walking the streets of downtown New York City, trying to sort out his thoughts. He couldn't get the image of the girl huddled on the sidewalk and Vanessa's cruel words echoing in his mind out of his head. He decided to go back to the place where it all happened, without really knowing why. Maybe he wanted to make sure the teenager had gotten home safely, or maybe he just needed to face the place where his life had completely changed. When he reached the corner by the restaurant, he saw the girl was there again. This time, she was sitting on the steps of the commercial building next door, with her head resting on her knees. Her books were scattered beside her, and she seemed to be asleep. Richard approached slowly, not wanting to scare her. When he got closer, he realized she wasn't sleeping. She was crying softly. "Excuse me," he said gently. The girl quickly lifted her face, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. When she recognized him, her eyes widened. What are you doing here?" she asked, clearly uncomfortable. "I wanted to apologize for what happened earlier," Richard said, keeping a respectful distance. "And I wanted to make sure you're all right." The girl studied him for a long moment, as if trying to decide if she could trust him. "Why do you care?" she finally asked. The question was simple, but it hit Richard like a punch to the stomach. Why did he care? Why had he risked his relationship for a stranger? "Because every person deserves to be treated with dignity," he replied. "And because I should have done it a long time ago." "Done what?" "Stood up to people who hurt others." Richard sat down on a step, a few feet away from her. "My name is Richard. What's yours?" "Jasmine," she answered hesitantly. "Jasmine Walker." "Walker, what a coincidence. That's my last name too." Richard attempted a smile. "Do you live around here?" Jasmine pointed to a narrow alley across the street. "Over there in the community. I live with my father." She paused. "He's sick. That's why I was on the street today. I'm trying to get money for his medicine." "What kind of illness does he have?" "Diabetes. He needs insulin, but it's very expensive." Jasmine looked down at her feet. "I sell candy at the traffic light sometimes, but today I could barely sell anything. People are afraid of me." Richard felt his chest tighten. While he and Vanessa spent hundreds of dollars on dinner, this girl was struggling to get money to save her father's life. "And your mother?" "She passed away when I was 12, Jasmine replied simply. "Now it's just me and him. He always took care of me. Now it's my turn to take care of him." "Do you go to school?" "Yes, I do." Jasmine's eyes lit up for the first time. "I'm in my senior year of high school. I want to study nursing in college to help people like my father." "And can you manage everything? Studies, work, taking care of your father?" "It's hard," she admitted. "Sometimes I fall asleep in class, sometimes I miss school when he gets sick, but I won't give up. Education is the only thing no one can take away from us. My father always said that." Richard was silent for a few moments, impressed by the young woman's determination. Here was a 17-year-old girl facing challenges he had never even imagined, and yet she kept her dignity and dreams alive. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Jasmine nodded. "Why didn't you curse at my fiancée when she humiliated you?" "I would have." "And what would that have solved?" Jasmine shrugged. "It would just confirm what she thinks about me. My father always said we don't change people by responding at their level." The wisdom of that teenager left Richard ashamed. How many times had he given in to Vanessa's mean comments just to avoid conflict? How many times had he laughed along with her at people who couldn't defend themselves? "Your father seems like a very wise man," he commented. "Yes," Jasmine's face lit up with pride. He was a teacher before he got sick, taught at a public school for 20 years, always said education is the greatest weapon against ignorance. What did he teach? History. He loved telling stories about heroes who changed the world by being kind to people. Jasmine smiled for the first time. He said the real revolution happens when we treat everyone well, no matter who they are. Richard felt a lump in his throat. How long had it been since he'd heard someone speak with so much love and admiration about another person? Vanessa rarely spoke well of anyone, always finding flaws and reasons to criticize. Where did he teach? At the neighborhood school. The students loved him. Even after he got sick, many still come to visit. Jasmine looked at the darkening sky. I think I need to go. He must be wondering where I am. Jasmine, Richard called as she began gathering her books. Let me help with your father's medicine. She stopped and looked at him suspiciously. Why? You don't even know me. Because it's the right thing to do, Richard answered honestly, and because I need to start doing more right things in my life. You don't have to do this out of pity for me. It's not pity, Richard stood up. It's respect. For what you're doing for your father, for your dreams, for your dignity. You've taught me more in one conversation than many people I've known for years. Jasmine was silent for a long moment, clearly torn between pride and need. My father always said to accept help when it comes with a clean heart, she said finally. But I want to pay you back when I can. Deal. Richard smiled. Now let me walk you home, it's getting dark. You wouldn't want to come into where I live. Jasmine shook her head. It's very different from your world. Jasmine, Richard said seriously. After what happened today, I realized I need to know the real world better. My world was just a bubble. As they walked through the narrow streets of the community, Richard had his first real lesson about social inequality. The small cramped houses, the lack of basic sanitation, children playing unsupervised in the middle of the street, the strong smell of food mixed with sewage. But he also saw things that surprised him. Neighbors helping each other, children studying under streetlights, families gathered on the sidewalks talking and laughing. There was a sense of community he had never experienced in his luxury condominium. This is it. Jasmine stopped in front of a small house with exposed bricks. A weak voice called out for her from inside. I'm coming, Dad, she shouted back. Would you like to come in to meet him? Richard hesitated for a moment. Entering that house would mean crossing a line with no turning back. It would mean admitting there was a world beyond his, full of real people with real problems. Of course, he replied. The inside of the house was tiny but impeccably clean. In the room that also served as a bedroom, a man about 50 years old was lying on a simple bed. Despite his paleness and thinness, his eyes had the same intelligent sparkle as his daughter's. Dad, this is Mr. Richard. Jasmine made the introduction. He helped me today. The man tried to sit up but was clearly weak. You don't need to get up, Richard approached. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Marcus Walker. The man extended a trembling hand. Jasmine told me what happened. Thank you for defending her. I learned a lot from her, Richard replied sincerely. My daughter is my pride. Marcus smiled. Even with all the difficulties, she never gave up on her studies. She'll be the first in the family to go to college. She certainly will. Richard looked at Jasmine, who was organizing some medicines on a small table. Mr. Marcus, may I ask how long you've been sick? 2 years. I started feeling unwell at school and found out it was diabetes. At first I could still work, but it got worse. I had to retire due to disability. Marcus sighed. The money barely covers food. The medicines, it's hard. Dad, you don't need to worry about that today. Jasmine interrupted quickly, clearly not wanting her father to feel bad about not being able to provide. Mr. Marcus, may I ask a personal question? Richard said. How did you raise such a special daughter? The man smiled proudly. Jasmine was always like this. Since she was little, she shared her snacks with children who had none. She took care of hurt classmates during recess. I think people are born good or bad. We can only show them the right path. And did you always know what the right path was? Not always, Marcus admitted. But I learned that when we treat others well, the world gets a little better. It might seem small, but if everyone does their part. Richard was impressed by the wisdom of that simple man. Meanwhile, Jasmine had prepared some tea and offered it to him in a mismatched but clean cup. "What do you do for work?" Marcus asked. "I have a construction company," Richard replied. "We build commercial and residential buildings." "You must know the city well, then." "I know the wealthy part," Richard admitted. "Today was the first time I entered a community." "And what did you think?" Richard looked around, carefully considering his answer. "I thought it would be different, more dangerous, perhaps. But I found good people, families taking care of each other. It's different from what they show on television. Television likes to show only the bad side," Marcus said. "But here there are many honest, hard-working people. Folks who would do anything for family, for neighbors, like you and Jasmine. We just do what any father and daughter would do." Marcus coughed a little. "We take care of each other." Richard stayed there for another hour, listening to stories from the time when Marcus used to teach. The man spoke with passion about his former students, many of whom had managed to change their lives through education. "I had one student who became an engineer, another who became a doctor," Marcus recounted with shining eyes. "When they come visit me, they still call me Professor. It's the greatest honor of my life. You must be proud of the work you did." "The real pride is for her." Marcus looked at Jasmine, who was washing the cup in the tiny kitchen. "She could have given up when I got sick. She could have taken any job to make quick money. But she keeps studying, keeps dreaming. She's stronger than I am." When Richard finally said goodbye, he promised to return the next day with the money for the medicines. Marcus tried to refuse, but Jasmine interceded. "Dad, remember what you always said about accepting help when it comes with good intentions." "All right," the man relented, "but I want you to know we'll find a way to repay you." "You already have," Richard said sincerely. "You've shown me what really matters in life." On his way back home, Richard couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. How long had it been since he'd seen such a close-knit family? How long since he'd heard someone speak about dreams and hopes with such sincerity? When he reached his penthouse apartment in the Upper East Side, everything seemed different. The expensive furniture, the elaborate decor, the panoramic view of the city, none of it brought the feeling of peace he had felt in that tiny house. His cell phone wouldn't stop ringing. They were messages from Vanessa, alternating between pleas and threats. First she apologized, then accused him of being crazy, then went back to begging him to talk. "Richard, please don't do this to me. It was just a bad moment. You know I'm not like that. Are you throwing away 2 years of a relationship over a stranger? If you don't call me within an hour, I'll tell everyone you cheated on me. Honey, forgive me. I promise I'll change." Richard looked at the messages and realized he felt nothing anymore. Not anger, not sadness, not longing. It was as if, upon meeting Jasmine and Marcus, he had discovered that Vanessa was a completely empty person. He turned off the phone and went to bed but couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Jasmine had said about accepting help with a clean heart, and what Marcus had said about everyone doing their part to make the world better. For the first time in years, Richard Thompson had a mission that went beyond making money. The next morning, he cancelled all his meetings and went straight to a pharmacy near the community. He bought not only the insulin for Marcus, but also vitamins and other medicines that could help. Then he stopped at a market and bought basic groceries. When he arrived at the Thompsons' house, Jasmine was getting ready to go to school. "Good morning," he greeted. "I brought the things we talked about." "You didn't have to buy so much." Jasmine looked at the bags with concern. "We don't want to take advantage of your kindness." "You're not taking advantage of anything." Richard entered the house. "Good morning, Mr. Marcus." "Good morning, young man. Jasmine told me about your generosity." The man was sitting on the bed with more color in his face. "I don't know how to thank you." "How about letting me help a little more?" Richard sat in a simple chair. "I have a proposal for you." Jasmine and Marcus exchanged worried glances. "What kind of proposal?" Jasmine asked suspiciously. "I want to hire Mr. Marcus as an educational consultant for my company," Richard said, and saw both of them become speechless. "I'm thinking about creating an education program for the employees' children, and I need someone with experience." But I'm sick, Marcus protested. I can't work like I used to. You don't have to. You can work from home, at your own pace, help create the curriculum, teach some classes when you feel well. What matters is your experience. What about me? Jasmine asked timidly. You can be my assistant, part-time so it doesn't interfere with your studies. I'll help you with your school materials, and when you graduate, I'll pay for college. The room fell completely silent. Father and daughter looked at each other as if they couldn't believe what they were hearing. Why do you want to do this? Marcus finally asked. You've known us for less than 2 days. Because you reminded me of what I had forgotten, Richard answered honestly. That there are good people in the world worth helping. And because I need to do something that has meaning. You're not doing this out of pity, are you? Jasmine's eyes were welling up. I'm doing it because you deserve it, because I believe in your potential, and because I want to learn more about how to be a better person. Marcus began to cry. They were tears of relief, gratitude, and hope. Jasmine ran to hug her father, and the two stood there, holding on to each other, unable to speak. Can I take that as a yes? Richard asked, moved by the scene. Yes, Marcus replied between sobs. Yes, we accept. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 3 days later, Richard was in the office preparing the documents to formalize the hires when his secretary announced an unexpected visitor. Mr. Richard, your fiancée is here, Margaret said over the intercom, with a clearly uncomfortable tone. Richard sighed. He had completely ignored Vanessa's calls and messages over the past few days, hoping she would get the message. Apparently, she had decided to confront him directly. Send her in. Vanessa entered the room like a hurricane, elegant as always, but with red eyes and a desperate expression. Finally, she exclaimed, you disappeared, Richard. You don't answer my calls. You don't reply to my messages. We're over, Vanessa. I thought that was clear. No! She slammed her fist on his desk. You can't break up with me just like that out of nowhere because of some beggar. She's not a beggar. She has a name, Jasmine, and she's one of the most dignified people I've ever met. You're obsessed with her. Vanessa began pacing back and forth. This isn't normal, Richard. You need help. Maybe I do. I need help understanding how I stayed with someone so cruel for so long. Vanessa stopped pacing and stared at him with a mix of shock and anger. Cruel? I'm cruel. You mocked a teenager on the street just because she was poor. Laughed at her situation as if it were a show for your entertainment. Richard stood up. If that's not cruelty, I don't know what is. But I didn't do anything wrong. It was just a joke. A joke? Richard felt his anger rising. Humiliating someone who's already suffering is a joke to you? Oh, for heaven's sake, you're making too big a deal out of nothing. Vanessa rolled her eyes. The girl wasn't even really hurt. Of course she was. She was crying. So what? Poor people are always crying. It's part of their act to get money. Richard looked at Vanessa and felt a chill. How had he fallen in love with someone so devoid of empathy? How had he planned to marry a person who saw other human beings as inferior? Listen carefully, Vanessa, he said with a dangerous calm. I don't want you in my life anymore. I don't want your calls, your messages, your visits. It's over. You can't do this to me, she screamed. I'm Vanessa Taylor. My family has a name in this city. How dare you humiliate me like this? The same way you humiliated Jasmine on the street. Don't compare us. I'm someone important. She's nobody. There, Richard shook his head. You just confirmed exactly why I can't be with you anymore. Vanessa stayed quiet for a few seconds, clearly trying to process that he was serious. Okay, she said, completely changing her tone. I'm sorry. I got carried away. Let's talk properly. What do I need to do for you to forgive me? Nothing, Vanessa. There's nothing you can do. It's over. But Richard... She started crying, tears that seemed rehearsed. You know I love you. We're going to get married. We already booked the church, the venue. I'll cancel everything. No. Please? She moved closer to him. Look, I promise I'll never speak badly about poor people in front of you again. I promise I'll pretend to care about them. Is that what you want? Richard looked at her with a mix of pity and disgust. You really don't get it, do you? It's not about pretending. It's about having real compassion. It's about seeing others as people. But I do. I just don't see why I have to care about problems that aren't mine. And that's exactly why it can't work between us. Richard went to the door and opened it. Please leave my office. Richard, she screamed as he started closing the door. You'll regret this. No one will want you knowing you left a woman like me for some slum girl. Then nobody deserves me anyway. After Vanessa left, Richard spent a few minutes trying to calm down. He was shaking with anger and adrenaline, but he also felt enormous relief. It was like he had freed himself from a prison he had built himself. Margaret knocked on the door and entered with a worried expression. Mr. Richard, is everything all right? It's great, Margaret. Finally great, he smiled. You can cancel all the wedding vendors and call the lawyer. I need to change my will. Yes, sir. Anything else? Yes. I need you to prepare employment contracts for 2 people. Marcus Walker, as an educational consultant, and Jasmine Walker, as a project assistant. You can start with salaries that match the positions. Margaret wrote everything down without asking questions, used to her boss's quick decisions. And also, prepare the project for a foundation. I want to create a scholarship program for low-income youth. What should the foundation be called? Richard thought for a moment. Thompson Hope Foundation, in honor of the family that taught me what really matters. That afternoon, Richard went personally to the community to pick up Jasmine and take her to the office and introduce her to the work environment. He found father and daughter celebrating quietly. Marcus had managed to borrow some old pedagogy books from a former teacher colleague. How are you both? He asked. Better than in a long time, Marcus answered, with more energy in his voice. The insulin is working. Today I even managed to read for a few hours. And you, Jasmine? Nervous, she admitted. I've never worked in an office. What if I do something wrong? Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning. The important thing is to want to do your best. Richard smiled. Are you ready to see your new job? On the way to the office, Jasmine asked dozens of questions about how to behave, how to talk to people, if her clothes were appropriate. Richard realized that underneath the determination, there was an insecure teenager trying to navigate a completely new world. Relax, he said. The people in my office are professionals. They'll treat you well. What if they notice I live in the community? So what? They'll think I'm not fit to work there. Richard stopped the car in the middle of traffic and looked at her seriously. Jasmine, listen carefully. Where you live doesn't define who you are. Your dedication, your intelligence, your character, that's what defines you. And you have these qualities in abundance. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen how you care for your father, how you talk about your dreams, how you treat people with respect even when they don't deserve it. He started driving again. These are the qualities that truly matter. When they arrived at the construction company building, Jasmine was impressed by the modern and elegant facade. In the elevator, she grew increasingly nervous. Take a deep breath, Richard said. You belong here just as much as anyone else. The office was a busy environment, with architects, engineers, and administrators working on various projects. When Richard entered with Jasmine, some people looked with curiosity, but most remained focused on their work. Everyone, Richard got their attention. I'd like to introduce Jasmine Walker, our new project assistant. She'll be working directly with me on the educational program we're developing. The greetings were cordial and professional. Margaret immediately took Jasmine under her wing, showing her where each department was located and explaining the basic workings of the company. You'll do very well here, the secretary said while setting up a desk for Jasmine. Mr. Richard is a fair boss, and the environment is good for working. How long have you worked here? Jasmine asked. 15 years. I've seen this company grow from the beginning. Margaret smiled. Mr. Richard has always been fair with the employees, but lately he's been different. More human, you know? During the afternoon, Richard showed Jasmine some of the company's projects, explaining how the construction business worked. She asked smart questions and showed genuine interest in learning. Tomorrow, you can start by helping me research existing educational programs, he explained. I want to understand what's already being done in the field so we don't reinvent the wheel. Can I suggest something? Jasmine said hesitantly. Of course. How about talking to the employees' children? Ask them what they need, what they'd like to learn. Sometimes adults think they know what's best, but they don't ask the children. Richard stopped writing and looked at her, impressed. That's a brilliant idea. Why didn't I think of that? Because you're an adult. Jasmine laughed for the first time since entering the office. Adults sometimes forget to ask young people what they want. You're right. Let's do that. Can you organize a conversation with the employees' families? I can, and Mr. Marcus can help too. He knows how to talk to children. When they left the office in the late afternoon, Jasmine was beaming. How was your first day? Richard asked. Better than I imagined. People were kind. The work is interesting. She paused. Thank you for giving me this chance. You're giving me the chance to do something meaningful. On the way back, they stopped at a simple diner to eat something. Jasmine chose the cheapest item on the menu, but Richard insisted she order whatever she wanted. I still can't believe all this is happening, she said while biting into a hamburger. Yesterday I was worried about getting money for my father's medicine. Today, I'm working in an elegant office. Life changes fast sometimes. What happened to your fiancée? Jasmine asked suddenly. Richard almost choked on his soda. How did you know she was my fiancée? She mentioned it at the restaurant. Said you were going to get married. Jasmine looked at him curiously. Did you break up because of me? It ended because I finally opened my eyes to who she really was. Do you feel bad about that? Richard reflected honestly on the question. No, he answered, surprised at himself. I don't. Maybe I should. It was 2 years together, but I don't. Maybe you never really loved her. Why do you say that? Because when you truly love someone, you forgive their flaws. But when you find out the person has no heart, there's no way to keep loving them. Jasmine spoke with a maturity that impressed Richard. My father taught me that. Your father is very wise. Yes, and you are also being wise. You chose the right side. Which side? The side of good people. That night, Richard slept better than he had in months. For the first time in a long while, he was at peace with his decisions and excited about the future. But the peace didn't last long. The next morning, Margaret called him urgently. Mr. Richard, there's a situation. Miss Vanessa is in the reception area making a scene. She brought a man who says he's her lawyer. What do they want? She's talking about breach of promise to marry and emotional damages. Margaret made a face. She's yelling that she'll sue for abandonment and defamation. Richard sighed. He should have known Vanessa wouldn't give up easily. Send them up. Vanessa entered the room accompanied by a middle-aged man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Dr. Mitchell Brooks. Richard, Vanessa said in a falsely sweet voice, I came here one last time to try and resolve our situation amicably. We have no situation, Vanessa. I've made that clear. Oh, but we do, she smiled threateningly. 2 years together, a promise of marriage, joint investments. All of that has legal value. Dr. Mitchell opened a briefcase and took out some papers. Mr. Richard, my client has suffered considerable emotional damages due to the abrupt end of the relationship. Furthermore, there were financial losses with the wedding preparations. I already said I'll pay all the costs for the cancelled wedding. It's not just that. Vanessa leaned over the desk. You humiliated me. You broke up with me because of a lesser person. That made me lose social status, look bad in front of our friends. Vanessa, Richard began, but the lawyer interrupted him. We are prepared to file a lawsuit for emotional and material damages in the amount of 2 million reais. Richard almost laughed at the absurdity of the situation. 2 million? For ending a relationship? For breach of promise to marry and defamation, Dr. Mitchell said coldly. My client was publicly ridiculed. She ridiculed herself when she humiliated a teenager on the street. That's your version of the facts, Vanessa said. I'll say you were having an affair with that girl and used the situation as an excuse to break up with me. Richard felt his blood boil. You're going to accuse a 17-year-old girl of having an affair with me? If it's necessary to clear my reputation, yes. Vanessa, that is unacceptable. You can't destroy an innocent person's life out of revenge. I can, and I will, she stood up. Unless you come back to me, then I'll forget all this and we can go back to normal. Never. Then we'll see you in court. Dr. Mitchell put the papers away. You have 48 hours to reconsider before we file the lawsuit. After they left, Richard was distraught. He didn't care about the money from a potential settlement, but the idea of Vanessa dragging Jasmine into a sordid situation infuriated him. He called his lawyer, Dr. Henry Morrison, and scheduled an urgent meeting. Richard, technically she has some right to compensation, Dr. Henry explained after hearing the whole story. A broken promise to marry without just cause can create an obligation to reimburse for losses. But there was just cause. She humiliated a teenager right in front of me. It's going to be hard to prove that in court. And what if she actually makes up a story about you and the girl? Jasmine is 17. How could anyone believe such an outrageous accusation? Unfortunately, the justice system isn't always fair, and the social difference between you could be used against you. Richard left the lawyer's office completely dejected. How had it come to this? Just a few weeks ago, his biggest worry was choosing the wedding menu. And now he was being blackmailed by his own ex-fiancée. He decided to talk to Jasmine and Marcus about the situation. It wasn't fair for them to be caught off guard if Vanessa decided to actually make up lies about them. She said what? Jasmine turned pale when she heard about the threats. She said she'll make up a story that I'm having an affair with you to justify the end of our relationship. But that's a lie. Marcus stood up from the bed, outraged. How can a person make up something like that? Desperate people do desperate things. Richard sighed. I'm sorry for bringing this problem to you. You didn't bring any problem, Jasmine said with determination. She's the one being mean. We'll face this together. Jasmine, you don't understand. An accusation like this, even if it's false, can destroy your reputation. It could affect your studies, your future. So what? She crossed her arms. What am I supposed to do, Hyde? Pretend I don't know you after everything you've done for us? My daughter is right, Marcus said. We won't let a bad person intimidate us. But you don't understand how justice works when it's rich people against poor people. She has money to hire the best lawyers. And we have the truth, Jasmine replied simply. Richard looked at that simple family that was willing to face a legal battle to defend him and felt an overwhelming emotion. When was the last time someone had fought for him? When was the last time he felt truly loved and supported? Are you sure? He asked. Because I could pay what she's asking for and avoid all this trouble. No, Jasmine and Marcus said at the same time. If you pay, she'll know she can blackmail anyone, Jasmine explained, and she'll do it again to someone else. Besides, Marcus added, if we give in to blackmail, we're saying that people like her can humiliate people like us without any consequences. It's decided then. Richard felt a renewed determination. We'll fight. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The next few days were tense. Richard hired a team of lawyers specialized in defamation cases to prepare for the legal battle. Meanwhile, Vanessa had started a smear campaign on social media, spreading insinuations about Richard's new interest. Woman traded for teenager in 2-year relationship, Margaret read one of Vanessa's Instagram posts. She didn't name names, but she posted pictures of the places you used to go together with dramatic captions. How low? Richard shook his head. How could I have gotten involved with someone like that? The important thing is, you found out in time. Margaret tried to console him. Imagine if you had married her. The situation got even worse when Richard's mother showed up at the office, completely upset by the gossip circulating in her social circle. Richard, what is this story they're telling about you? Mrs. Martha, an elegant 60-year-old lady, entered the room visibly agitated. Mom, sit down here. I need to tell you everything that happened. For an hour, Richard recounted all the events from the night at the restaurant to Vanessa's current threats. His mother listened in silence, asking pointed questions and showing different emotions on her face. "And you broke up with Vanessa because of this?" she asked when he finished. "I broke up because I realized she wasn't the person I thought she was." Mrs. Martha stayed quiet for a few minutes, clearly processing everything she had heard. "Richard," she finally said, "I need to confess something. I never really liked Vanessa." "What do you mean?" "I always thought she was very superficial, too concerned with appearances, very critical of others. But you seemed happy, so I never said anything." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's not a mother's place to choose her son's girlfriend," she smiled sadly. "But now that you've told me this story, Richard, you did the right thing. Even knowing the problems this might cause? Especially knowing the problems, it shows you have character." Mrs. Martha stood up and kissed her son's forehead. "Your father would be proud. What about Jasmine and Marcus?" "I want to meet them. If they're as special as you say, I want to see for myself." That afternoon, Richard took his mother to meet the Thompson family. Mrs. Martha had insisted on bringing some gifts, fresh fruit, a homemade cake, and a few books left over from when Richard was a child. "You didn't have to bring anything," Marcus said when they arrived. "Of course I did. It's my first visit," Mrs. Martha replied naturally. "And I love your home. It's small, but it has a warmth you can feel as soon as you walk in." "You're very kind." Jasmine was clearly nervous about Richard's mother being there. "Relax, dear. I didn't come here to judge you." Mrs. Martha sat in the simple chair as if she were in her own home. "I came to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For waking my son up to reality, for showing him what really matters in life." During the conversation, Mrs. Martha and Marcus discovered they had a lot in common. Both were widowed, both had dedicated their lives to educating young people. She had been a pedagogical coordinator at a private school, and both believed in the transformative power of education. "You have to meet my friend Helen," Mrs. Martha told Marcus. "She runs a social project on the south side. You two would get along very well." "Mom," Richard interrupted with a smile, "are you trying to set Marcus up?" "And why not?" she laughed. "At our age, good company is hard to find." Marcus blushed but smiled too. "Mrs. Martha, you're quite a character." "I sure am. And you'll have to put up with me because I've decided I'm going to help with Richard's education project," she announced. "I have experience and free time, and after meeting you all, I want to be part of this story." When they returned home, Mrs. Martha was radiant. "Richard, what a wonderful family," she said in the car. "Jasmine is a bright young woman, and Marcus is a man of great wisdom. Now, do you understand why I made the decision I did?" "I understand perfectly, and I want you to know that no matter what happens with this lawsuit, you have my full support. What if Vanessa manages to prove her lies in court? Then we face it together." Mrs. Martha held her son's hand. "Richard, I haven't seen you this happy and fulfilled in a long time. That's worth any fight." 2 days later, Dr. Mitchell Brooks called Richard's office saying Vanessa had decided to file the lawsuit. The news was a bucket of cold water, but not entirely unexpected. "How do we proceed?" Richard asked his lawyer. "We'll challenge everything, and I'll try to find witnesses to what happened at the restaurant that night. If we can prove she really humiliated the girl, we have a strong defense. And what if she actually makes up that story about me and Jasmine? Then we'll sue her for slander. But Richard, you need to be prepared. These kinds of cases can take years to resolve." "I am prepared." But the problems were only just beginning. Vanessa had escalated her smear campaign, and now some clients of the construction company had started questioning whether they wanted to continue doing business with Richard. "Mr. Richard," Margaret said with a worried expression, "Mr. Anderson cancelled the shopping center contract. He said he can't be associated with someone with that kind of problem." "Problem with what?" "With having defended a teenager." He didn't go into details. He just said the investors felt uncomfortable with the news that's going around. Richard felt a tightness in his chest. His company was his life, the result of 15 years of hard work. The idea of seeing it all crumble because of Vanessa's lies was devastating. "How many other clients have expressed concern?" 3 so far. "But sir, there's some good news too." Mr. Carter, from the rival construction company, called saying he always knew Vanessa was no good and that he admires your stance. At least someone sees the situation clearly. That night, Richard came home completely exhausted. He was starting to question whether he had made the right decision. Maybe he should have paid what Vanessa wanted and avoided all this trouble. His phone rang. It was Jasmine. "Hi, Mr. Richard. How was your day?" Complicated. He didn't want to go into details about the cancelled clients. "I wanted to tell you something. Today I talked to some schoolmates about the educational project. They got excited. They have lots of ideas for courses they'd like to take." "What kind of courses?" "Computer science, English, crafts, even woodworking." The excitement in Jasmine's voice was contagious. "And my dad already spoke with 3 former teacher colleagues who want to help as volunteers." "Even knowing about the problems we're facing?" "Because of the problems," Jasmine said with conviction. "They said they won't let a bad person destroy something good before it even starts." After hanging up the phone, Richard felt ashamed. Here he was, a grown man with resources and experience, letting himself be defeated by difficulties while a 17-year-old teenager kept hope alive and continued working for the project. The next morning, he arrived at the office with renewed determination. "Margaret, call a meeting with all the employees. I want to clarify the situation once and for all." "Are you sure? It could be risky." "I am. These people have worked with me for years. They deserve to know the truth." At 10 in the morning, all the construction company employees were gathered in the conference room. Richard stepped onto a small platform and looked at those familiar faces. Architects, engineers, construction workers, secretaries, cleaners. "Everyone, you must have been hearing some stories about my personal life," he began. "I want to clarify the facts directly with you." For 20 minutes, Richard told the whole story, from the incident at the restaurant to Vanessa's current threats. He talked about Jasmine and Marcus, about the educational project, about his decision to prioritize human values above social convenience. "I know some of you might be worried about the company's stability," he said in conclusion. "I want to assure you that we will get through this together and come out stronger. And I want you to know that I'm proud to have you as my team." The silence that followed was broken by old Tony, a construction worker who had been with the company for 12 years. "Boss, I've been in construction for 30 years. I've seen plenty of rich folks treat workers like trash," he stood up. "You've always treated us with respect. If you defended a poor girl, you did the right thing." "It's true," said Carol, one of the architects. "And if some clients don't want to work with you because of that, it's because they don't deserve to work with us anyway." One by one, the employees expressed their support. In the end, the whole team was on their feet, applauding. Richard was moved by the show of loyalty and affection. "Thank you," he said with a choked voice. "This means a lot to me." "And when will the first class of the educational project be?" asked Mrs. Teresa, the company's longest-serving cleaner. "My grandson really wants to participate. If you all agree, next Saturday." Jasmine and Marcus have already started preparing the material. "We agree," several voices responded at the same time. After the meeting, Richard felt he had an army by his side. No matter what Vanessa pulled, he had good people fighting with him. But she still had a few cards up her sleeve. On Friday night, Richard was working late when he got a call from Dr. Henry. "Richard, we have a problem. Vanessa has found witnesses." "What kind of witnesses?" "People who claim to have seen you in compromising situations with the girl. Obviously, they're paid witnesses, but in court, it could complicate our situation." "This is unbelievable. How can someone lie like that in court?" "Unfortunately, it happens, but I have good news too. I managed to locate the waiter who was serving you the night at the restaurant. He clearly remembers everything that happened and is willing to testify in your favor." At least that's something. "And there's more. The girl, Jasmine, she wants to testify too. Says she won't let them make up lies about the two of you." Richard grew worried. Jasmine was a minor, and testifying in a trial like that could be traumatic for her. "Dr. Henry, I don't want Jasmine to go through that. She's too young to face a hostile interrogation. I'll talk to her and her father. But Richard, her testimony could be crucial. She is the main defense witness." That night, Richard went to the Thompsons' house to discuss the situation. He found the family gathered with Mrs. Martha, who had taken them to the movies and decided to have dinner with them. "How was the movie?" Richard asked, trying to keep the mood light. Beautiful, Jasmine was beaming. It had been 2 years since I'd been to the movies. Mrs. Martha chose a romantic movie that made me cry. Crying is good sometimes, Mrs. Martha said. It makes you feel alive. And you, Mr. Marcus, did you like it? I loved it. But the best part was seeing Jasmine happy. The man smiled at his daughter. It had been a long time since she laughed so much. Richard watched that scene, his mother and Jasmine discussing the movie details, Marcus smiling like he hadn't seen him smile before. It was a family, not by blood, but by genuine affection. Jasmine, he finally said, I need to talk to you and your father about something serious. The joy in the room immediately vanished. Everyone could tell from his expression that it was bad news. What happened? Marcus asked. Vanessa got people to lie in court. They're going to say they saw me with Jasmine in inappropriate situations. What kind of situations? Jasmine turned pale. It doesn't matter what kind, they're lies. But my lawyer thinks you should testify to tell the truth about our meetings. Of course I'll testify, Jasmine replied without hesitation. Honey, are you sure? Marcus was worried. A courtroom can be a scary place. I'm sure, Dad. I won't let them make Mr. Richard out to be the villain when he only helped us. Jasmine looked at Richard with determination. And I won't let them spread lies about me either. Jasmine, you're a minor. This is going to be very hard for you. Mr. Richard, you sacrificed your relationship to defend me. Now it's my turn to defend you. Mrs. Martha, who had remained silent until then, spoke up. Richard, the girl is right. If we don't confront these lies now, Vanessa will keep doing this to other people. But Mother, no buts. We'll support Jasmine in whatever she decides, and we'll all be there in court with her. Everyone? Me, Marcus, your company employees who want to go, Marcus's former students that he can gather. Mrs. Martha's eyes were shining with determination. We'll show that judge who the good people are in this story. At that moment, Richard understood what it truly meant to have a family. It wasn't just people connected by blood, but people willing to fight for each other, to sacrifice for the common good. It's decided then, he said. We'll face this together. The first day of the trial arrived on a grey Tuesday morning. Richard came to the courthouse accompanied by Dr. Henry, nervous but determined to fight for the truth. Across the hallway, Vanessa looked impeccable in a discreet yet elegant outfit, clearly chosen to make a good impression on the judge. She was accompanied by Dr. Mitchell and 2 other lawyers, which showed she was taking the case very seriously. She brought reinforcements, Dr. Henry observed, but don't worry, quality is better than quantity. The courtroom filled up quickly. Richard was surprised and moved to see how many people had come to support him, company employees, Marcus's former students, neighbors from the community where the Thompsons lived, and even some clients who had decided to keep their contracts despite the gossip. Where are Jasmine and Marcus? He asked Dr. Henry. They'll be here soon. The witnesses wait in a separate room until they're called. The judge, Dr. Ronald Murray, was a middle-aged man with a serious but fair expression. He began by explaining the terms of the lawsuit. Vanessa was seeking compensation for moral and material damages due to breach of promise to marry. Dr. Mitchell opened for Vanessa's defense, portraying her as a woman deceived and humiliated by a man who abandoned her for a street urchin. He used words like predator, opportunist, and criminal, making Richard feel as if he were actually guilty of something. When it was Dr. Henry's turn, he presented a completely different version of the facts. He spoke about Vanessa's act of cruelty at the restaurant, about Richard's conscious decision to prioritize human values, and about the lies invented out of revenge. Your Honor, Dr. Henry said in conclusion, this is not a case of breach of promise to marry. It is a case of a person who discovered the true character of his partner and had the courage to make the right decision. The judge called Vanessa's first witness, a man who introduced himself as a waiter from another restaurant and said he had seen Richard groping a teenager at a diner. On what exact date did you see this? Dr. Henry asked during cross-examination. It was, on a Tuesday last month, the man stammered. How strange. Because I have here the receipt showing my client was in a business meeting that Tuesday from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. with 17 witnesses. The man turned red and began contradicting himself. It was obvious he was lying, and the judge took notes with a disapproving expression. Vanessa's second witness was a woman who said she had seen Richard whispering things in a girl's ear in a public park. But when Dr. Henry asked for details about Richard and Jasmine's appearance, she described two completely different people. The girl was blonde and short, she said. Interesting. Dr. Henry showed a photo of Jasmine. This is the girl in question. As you can see, she is black and tall. Are you sure it was her you saw? The woman was clearly confused and began changing her version of events. Another witness exposed. Vanessa also gave her testimony, playing the role of the betrayed woman masterfully. She cried at the right moments, used emotional words, and painted Richard as a cold man who discarded her without explanation. He changed overnight, she said between sobs. He started going out secretly, lying about where he was. When I found out he was getting involved with a teenager, I confronted him. He didn't deny it and even said he would break up with me to be with her. Dr. Henry was relentless in his cross-examination. Ms. Vanessa, do you remember what you said about Jasmine Walker on the day of the incident at the restaurant? I didn't say anything too bad, it was just a comment. A comment? Dr. Henry consulted his notes. Didn't you call her disgusting, be stupid and thing? I was nervous, it wasn't personal. It wasn't personal to humiliate a teenager on the street, to laugh at her for wearing simple clothes. Vanessa began to get irritated, and her victim mask began to slip. She was begging, bothering people. Someone had to put her in her place. And what is her place, in your opinion? The place for people like her is far away from people like us. A murmur of disapproval swept through the room. Vanessa realized she had exposed herself and tried to correct it, but it was too late. The judge had seen her true personality. When it was the defense's turn to call witnesses, the first to be called was the waiter from the restaurant where it all began. He described in detail the scene he had witnessed, confirming every word of Richard's account. The lady was being very cruel to the girl, he said. Everyone in the restaurant was uncomfortable, mister. Richard tried to make her stop, but she kept laughing and pointing. And how did the teenager react? She became very sad. She was crying when she left. It was very pitiful. Next, several of Richard's employees were called, who testified about his character and how he always treated people from all social classes well. In 12 years of working with him, said old Tony, I've never seen Dr. Richard disrespect anyone. He always greets us by name, always asks about our families. He is not the kind of man to do what they're saying he did. Mrs. Teresa, the cleaning lady, was even more blunt. This Dr. Richard is a good man. If he defended a girl on the street, it was because he saw an injustice. And if he broke up with his fiancée, it was because he found out she was no good. The most emotional moment came when Marcus Walker was called to testify. Even still weak from his illness, he made a point of going to court to defend the man who had changed his life and his daughter's life. Mr. Marcus, Dr. Henry began, how did you meet Richard Thompson? Through my daughter. She came home saying a man had defended her from some insults on the street. Marcus spoke slowly, but with a firm voice. I thought she was making it up, because it's not common for someone rich to care about our problems. And when did you meet him in person? He showed up at our house offering help. He didn't know us from anywhere, but he wanted to help. He bought medicine for my diabetes, food for the house, and then offered honest work for both of us. At any point did you suspect his intentions with your daughter? Marcus looked directly at Richard with a paternal smile. Doctor, if I had suspected him, I wouldn't have let my daughter work in his office. Richard Thompson gave me back my dignity when I thought I had lost everything. He is a man of character. Anything else you would like to add? I want to tell the judge that there are two types of people in the world, those who help when they see someone suffering, and those who laugh at the suffering of others. Marcus looked at Vanessa. Dr. Richard is the first type, and that's why my daughter admires him, not for any other twisted reason they made up. When Marcus returned to his seat, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the judge was visibly moved by the testimony. Finally, it was Jasmine's turn. She entered the room wearing a simple but clean dress, her hair neatly done with a dignified posture. At 17, she seemed much more mature than her age would suggest. "Jasmine Walker," Dr. Henry began gently, "can you tell the judge how you met Richard Thompson?" "I met him on a very difficult day for me," Jasmine replied in a clear voice. "I was on the street trying to gather money for my father's medicine when a woman started laughing at me and saying horrible things." "What kind of things?" "That I was disgusting, stupid, that I should be working instead of begging." Jasmine didn't look at Vanessa. She kept her eyes on the judge. "But I wasn't begging. I was just resting before going home." "And how did Richard Thompson react?" "At first he tried to make her stop talking, but she kept going. Then he got angry and defended me. He called me a person, said I deserved respect." "Were you surprised?" "Very. No rich person had ever defended me before. Usually people pretend we don't exist." "Jasmine," Dr. Henry asked carefully, "at any point did Richard Thompson behave inappropriately with you?" "Never," she replied categorically. "He always treated me with respect, like a father would treat a daughter. When he came to our house, he spoke with my father, offered me honest work, encouraged me to study." "And how did you feel when you found out he had ended the relationship to defend you?" "I felt like I had finally met a truly good person." Jasmine looked at Richard for the first time. "Someone willing to do the right thing, even when it's hard." Dr. Mitchell tried to unsettle Jasmine during cross-examination, but she remained firm and consistent in all her answers. When he insinuated that she was lying to protect Richard, she replied with impressive maturity, "Doctor, I could be at home studying instead of being here going through this. If I'm here, it's because I won't accept them making up lies about a person who has only done good for me." At the end of Jasmine's testimony, the judge called for a 15-minute recess. Richard took the opportunity to thank everyone who had come to support him. "How do you feel?" he asked Marcus and Jasmine. "Proud," Marcus replied. "Proud to be on the right side of this story. And confident," Jasmine added. "The truth always wins in the end." When the session resumed, it was time for closing arguments. Dr. Mitchell made a last effort to convince the judge, but his words sounded empty after the testimonies that had been heard. Dr. Henry was brilliant in his final defense. "Your Honor, this case shows us the difference between justice and revenge. The plaintiff wants to use the judicial system to get back at a man who had the courage to choose decency over convenience. The testimonies we heard today made it clear who the real characters in this story are. On one side, good people fighting for dignity. On the other, someone trying to destroy lives out of pure malice." The judge announced he would give his decision the following week. As everyone was leaving the courtroom, Vanessa passed by Richard and whispered with hatred, "You may have won today, but this isn't over." "For me, it's been over for a long time," he replied calmly. A week later, Dr. Henry called with the judge's decision. Vanessa's request was completely denied. Furthermore, she was ordered to pay court costs and compensation for moral damages to Richard and Jasmine for defamation and false testimony. "The judge was categorical," Dr. Henry explained. He said it was clear that the plaintiff had fabricated serious accusations to get revenge, and that this behavior cannot be tolerated by the judicial system. The news spread quickly. Clients who had cancelled contracts started calling wanting to reverse their decisions. Local newspapers reported the case as an example of how justice can prevail over lies. But for Richard, the real victory wasn't the outcome of the trial. It was realizing that, by making the right choice that night at the restaurant, he had found his true family and his true purpose. On the Saturday following the trial, the first class of the Thompson Hope Foundation's educational project took place. The hall Richard had rented in the community was packed with children and teenagers eager to learn. "Good morning, everyone," Jasmine said into the microphone. "Welcome to our educational program. Today we'll start with a question." Marcus took the microphone. "How many of you believe you can be whatever you want to be in life?" Several little hands went up timidly. "I want everyone to raise their hand," he insisted. "Because it's true. Education is the greatest weapon against poverty, and you have the right to dream big." Richard watched from a corner, moved to see those children with their eyes shining with hope. Mrs. Martha was by his side, also visibly touched by the scene. "You made the right choice, son," she whispered. "I made several right choices," he replied, looking at Jasmine, who was now helping a girl with a math exercise. "And I intend to keep making them." 2 months later, the project had grown so much that Richard had to rent a larger space. Over 100 children regularly participated in tutoring classes, computer science, English, and vocational workshops. Marcus, fully recovered with proper treatment, had become the official educational coordinator of the program. Mrs. Martha coordinated cultural activities and had managed to set up a small library with donated books. Jasmine continued studying during the week and working on the project on weekends. Her school grades had improved so much that she received a full scholarship to study nursing at university. "I can't believe I'm going to college," she told Richard one afternoon, showing him her entrance exam results. "I always knew you could do it," he replied proudly. "And you know what makes me happiest?" "What?" "That I can help other people like you helped me. When I graduate, I want to come back here to take care of the community's health. You're going to be an amazing nurse." "And what about you? Are you happy with the choices you made?" Richard looked around. Children studying diligently, Marcus teaching history with passion, Mrs. Martha telling stories to the little ones. That makeshift classroom had more life and joy than all the expensive restaurants he used to frequent. "Jasmine, I've never been happier in my life. Neither has my father. Yesterday he told me he feels useful again, that he has a purpose. And I learned that purpose isn't about how much money we make, but about how many lives we can touch." 6 months after the first class, something happened that moved everyone. Mary, one of the program's most dedicated students, passed the entrance exam for a technical nursing school. "I want to be like teacher Jasmine," she said on the day of the symbolic graduation they organized for her. "You'll be better than me," Jasmine replied, hugging the girl. That night, during the small celebratory dinner at the Thompson house, Richard made an announcement. "Everyone, I have news. I have. The construction company received a proposal to participate in an affordable housing project. We're going to build decent homes for low-income families." "Really?" Marcus got excited. "Really? And I want you to coordinate the educational part of the project. Let's build a school right within the housing complex." "Richard," Mrs. Martha said with teary eyes, "your father would be so proud of the man you've become." "I hope so." "Don't just hope," Jasmine interrupted. "I'm sure. Any father would be proud to have a son who chose love over fear." "Chose love over fear?" Richard didn't understand. "Yes. You were always afraid to confront bad people because you might lose what you had. But when you saw I was suffering, you chose love and faced your fear." Richard was impressed by the depth of Jasmine's observation. That was exactly what had happened. For years he had chosen fear. Fear of confronting Vanessa, fear of leaving his comfort zone, fear of truly caring for others. "And do you know what the result was?" Mrs. Martha added. "You lost a cruel girlfriend and gained a real family." "Gained more than that," Marcus said, raising his water glass. "Gained a purpose in life, gained the chance to make a difference in the world." "A toast then." Richard raised his glass too. "To the family we choose and the dreams we build together." "To the Thompson family," Jasmine joked, "which grew from 2 people to 4 and now will grow to hundreds with the housing project." "Official Thompson family," Mrs. Martha laughed. "Made up of a Thompson by blood, a Thompson by adoption, a Thompson by heart, and dozens of Thompsons by choice." Everyone laughed and toasted, but Richard was serious, thoughtful. "Jasmine," he said suddenly, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Have you ever thought of having me as your father?" The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus was speechless. Mrs. Martha put her hand to her chest, and Jasmine began to cry. "Are you serious?" she asked through tears. "Completely serious. I want to adopt you officially, if you both agree, of course." He looked at Marcus. "I don't want to take anyone's place. Just make official what I already feel in my heart." Marcus also began to cry. "Richard," he said with a choked voice, "there's no greater honor for a father than to see that he raised such a special daughter that someone else wants to call her their daughter too. So you agree? We agree, Marcus and Jasmine answered together. But with one condition, Marcus added. What? That you let me call you my son too? And that's how Richard Thompson discovered that sometimes we lose everything to gain what truly matters. By confronting his own cowardice that night at the restaurant, he not only defended an innocent girl, he found his true identity. 1 year later, Jasmine Thompson Walker, as she liked to joke with the double surname, graduated as a nursing technician with honors. Her father, Marcus Walker, had been decorated by the city as Social Educator of the Year. Mrs. Martha Thompson, who had adopted the family surname out of love, coordinated 5 different educational projects. And Richard Thompson, who had begun this story as a rich but empty businessman, was now known throughout the city as the man who turned fear into love and privilege into purpose. The Thompson Hope Foundation had already helped over 1,000 families, built 3 community schools, and offered scholarships to 200 young people. But more important than the numbers was the legacy of dignity and hope they spread wherever they went. Vanessa never showed up in any of their lives again. She moved to another state after her lies were publicly exposed, and Richard genuinely hoped she had learned something from that whole experience. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of overcoming and family love. Do you believe Richard made the right decision by confronting his own cowardice? What lesson did this amazing family leave for your life? Share your thoughts in the comments with heartfelt words. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories that warm the heart.